What is up everyone, it's me Dan here. Today I'm going to be doing my review for Arrow Season 6 Episode 14 entitled Collision Course, or as all of us Arrow fans will probably know it as, Arrow Civil War, because that's what's been marketed as. So this is the episode where we're going to have new Team Arrow and original Team Arrow go against each other over how to deal with Black Siren. Now this was an episode I had 50-50 thoughts going into, because even though I thought that the concept of an Arrow Civil War could be cool and could be interesting, I was worried how they would tackle it, mainly because I haven't been the biggest fan of new Team Arrow and the members on it. In these past few episodes I found them a little bit irritating. So with this episode I was a bit mixed on how I would receive this episode, and I've got to be honest, this was actually a disappointing episode. I really was underwhelmed by quite a few aspects with this episode. It's not a bad episode, it's certainly nowhere near as bad as episode 4, episode 9 of this season, but just in terms of how good this episode could have been to the final product, it's just so far off what I thought, in my opinion, it could have been. So the basic plot of the episode is that Oliver has found out that Caden James obviously has been killed, but because Ricardo Diaz, who we found out at the end of last episode, before he killed Caden James, he has control over the new police chief and a few city officials. So they've been able to cover up Caden's death and make it look as if, he was stabbed in prison, when in reality, he was stabbed in that room that obviously Caden was in with Oliver. So that was quite interesting how they were, how they were able to cover that up. It confused me at first, but then eventually I did remember that he'd brought out a few officials, so it did make sense. And we see the police chief that is under Diaz's payroll. We see her about twice in this episode, and I'm interested to see what they can do with her. I feel like the characters that are under his payroll are going to replace that Samantha Watson character that we had earlier on in the season, because she's not been around for quite a long time, and I believe it's because the actress is busy and can't do anything else. So I feel like that's the reason they've made these characters, is so they can continue this storyline of outing Oliver as the Green Arrow. So I'm interested to see where they do go with that. So off the back of that, they tried to gather all the money that Oliver was sending to Caden James, because obviously Caden made that bribe to Oliver that he had to give him $10 million per day to keep the citizens of Star City safe. They need to get that money back, and it turns out that Black Siren has actually stole that money. So they obviously tried to track down Black Siren, and she says that she will only give the money if she can get a new identity and get out the country to avoid Dinah. So original Team Arrow decide to eventually go ahead and protect her, while new Team Arrow, obviously consisting of Dinah, who wants to kill Laurel / Black Siren, they decide to go after Black Siren, and that is how the Civil War of this episode is formed. Even though there are a few things I was disappointed by, there were quite a few things that I did actually enjoy. So the scenes between Black Siren and Quentin, these are kind of becoming like a repeating positive whenever they're in an episode, but I really like the scenes between them. It kind of carried on this story arc we've been having now for these past few episodes of Quentin trying to break through to Laurel, trying to redeem her. And once again, I thought Katie Cassidy and Paul Blackthorne, they were great in their scenes. They had it was just really good to see that progression. He's got through to her. We even had a name drop of Zoom and Adrian Chase / Prometheus in this episode, when he's talking about all the people that she's worked under, and I think he's slowly breaking through to her, because of course Caden James even said last episode that he thought Black Siren wasn't as callous as she portrays herself to be. Basically, she's not as evil as she makes herself look. So I'm interested to see how they eventually break through that, because that was very interesting this episode. I liked that Thea had a bit more to do in this episode. I'm pretty sure this was only because obviously she's going to be a big part of the next episode when Roy comes back, but she had a bit to do in this episode, and I did enjoy that. It's always nice having Thea around, even though I have a feeling that she's probably going to leave the show within the next few episodes based on where the show could be going. I thought the fight scenes were good, especially like the final fight scene, obviously between new Team Arrow and original Team Arrow. I thought that was cool, but I do have a few negatives about it, which I will get onto later. So I did enjoy that, and I enjoyed some of the back and forth arguments between the two teams. Some of that was cool and interesting to me. I enjoyed some of it, and then of course you had the cliffhanger ending with Black Siren taking on the identity of Earth 1 Laurel. That's very interesting. I'm definitely excited to see where they go with that. I hope we actually have time to spend with that story in next week's episode, considering it's called Doppelganger. But I have a bit of a fear that it's going to get overshadowed by the Roy Harper storyline, which I hope it doesn't, but I wouldn't mind, considering I do love Roy Harper, so I wouldn't be completely mad if we don't get a lot of it next episode. Now we get into the negatives, and this isn't really so much for negatives, but just areas where I felt like it was so disappointing to what it could have been. But I'm going to start off first off with the things I didn't like about the episode before we get into like the more disappointing aspects. The first one was Dinah Drake. Honestly, I don't know what it's been for the last few episodes of Arrow, but Dinah has become an incredibly insufferable character. Her writing is absolutely atrocious, and the writers are trying to make us like feel justified in agreeing with her that she wants to kill Black Siren, but she just sounds like a psychopath, and I just don't think the writers are doing a good job of getting us behind Dinah's decisions. Like, she was just a full-on dick at times in this episode, like where she tells Curtis, oh yeah, use that chip, you know, to disrupt Diggle's arm. Yeah, just do that. It's just decisions like that make her such an annoying character, and I'm going to say it right now. If she is not gone by the end of this season, I will be very, very annoyed, because I'm just not enjoying her as a character. I don't feel like there's much they can do with her anymore. If she doesn't leave, I'd be very upset, and I just don't like her as a character. Renee in this episode as well was annoying, as he tried to play up this whole fight, you know, thing between him and Oliver, you know, in one scene where he could get the audio chip on him. That was really annoying. Quite a few of the argument scenes between New Team Arrow and Original Team Arrow were also very lame and very underwhelming. They just felt very disappointing in terms of the conflict and the morality, you know, questions that they brought up in there. I felt like they were just very one-sided. It felt very one-sided towards, you know, us agreeing with Original Team Arrow more, which I just found really annoying. I would have preferred to see a level playing field there with how the arguments drew out, because obviously comparisons are going to be made between this and, you know, Captain America Civil War, you know, this episode. But the difference was, in Civil War, there was a legitimate reason to agree with both teams, and they developed it so well throughout the runtime of that film that you were able to agree with both of them, and at times you really didn't know what side you stood on, because both sides had very valid counter-arguments towards one another. Here, it just felt like that was all given to Original Team Arrow, and New Team Arrow were just kind of the bad guys, and I thought that was very, very disappointing, because I would have preferred to have seen a level playing field in terms of who we're in agreement with. The fight at the end, you know, between Original Team Arrow and New Team Arrow, although I thought the choreography was good, the lighting was absolutely terrible. I could barely see some of the fights that were going on, especially the one between Oliver versus Wild Dog and Mr. Terrific. That was so poorly lit. The only time I could see what was going on was when Curtis had his T-spheres, which is just bad. That is such bad lighting for a show if I can't tell what's going on at the time. I just found that aspect very disappointing to me personally. And some of Curtis's T-spheres tricks and what he could do with the T-spheres, it felt like the writers were just making that up out of their own minds at the last minute. Like the fact that his T-spheres are able to create holographic projections of Earth 2 Laurel based on like her canary cry or something, like that's just ridiculous. It felt very over the top, and it just felt like something that I don't think the writers really put much thought into when they were writing it for this episode. So with that all being said, I did find this episode disappointing, but I don't think it was a bad episode. It's not an episode that I would rewatch in a heartbeat, but I probably would rewatch it if I was going to do, you know, a marathon of this season. I do find it a bit underwhelming. I am interested to see what they do with New Team Arrow now that they're like fully split up now from Original Team Arrow, like they're not working or speaking together, so I'm interested in that regard. But in terms of the episode itself, I did find it underwhelming, so for that reason I'm going to give the episode a score of a 7 out of 10. It could have and should have been a lot higher than that, but I feel like just with some of the problems I had with some of the characters and the decisions and a few other technical areas, I feel like that was what really let me down with this episode. It's not terrible by any means, but just underwhelming compared to what it could have been. So that is my review for Arrow Season 6, Episode 14. Let me know in the comment section down below what you enjoyed about this episode and what you maybe didn't like about this episode. Let me know all about that down below. If you are new to the channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and remember to leave a like on the video, and I will hope to see you all next time.